And welcome back to the WCHE Morning Show. I'm Eric Lambera. Co-host today is Barry D. Joining us in the studio to discuss the scope of the East Whiteland Data Center project and the status of the fight against it, we have Tony Gianino. Tony is a concerned citizen deeply involved in the fight against the data center in East Whiteland Township. Tony, thank you for joining us this morning. Great to have you on the air.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, Tony, how you doing?
I'm doing all right.
We appreciate it. And so we'll dive right into things here. And so the data center in East Whiteland, when most of us hear this word data center, we think, it's a relatively big, empty building where some of our iCloud photos, Netflix videos sit on paper. Sounds completely harmless. The question I have for you here is, what's actually going on inside these places that the public isn't being told about?
Yeah, so appreciate it again having me here. A lot of what the public is made aware of is what they hear in the news and on their TV. Data centers have been around for a long time. They've been something that's used by hospital systems, financial services, companies, different local and state governments use them just to keep information. Our driver's licenses, our hospital records, our bank statements are kept in data centers. Those are relatively small. You can even have a small data center in your office as a server room. Some people, refer to it as. But that's not what these data centers today are being built as. They're being built as like these AI super hubs. They're no longer just your standard run-of-the-mill, I'm going to keep some files in here, and it's going to be a small thing that'll not really draw too much on the power of your local community. But these things are like being built now in hundreds of megawatts. For reference points, like Paoli Hospital, has a data center and it's 10 megawatts, and they keep all the hospital records on there, but there's no dynamic use of it. Now what these buildings are being put up as, they're not just your cloud libraries. They're not these innocent little things, that is being pushed upon like by, corporate hyperscale and growth. AI is a great thing, but these data centers are being put into people's backyards, not just mine, not the audiences, but everyone everywhere. A lot of the build out is being led by these lazy corporate developers. They look at our townships as easy pickings. We have our electrical grid set up. We have our utility set up for water, and
it has
sewage.
What they need. It has utilities, has the roads to get everything there, and the community be damned. It's here. This is what we're going to do. We're going to exploit it, and then after it's in, good luck.
Yeah, and it's convenient. It's something where it's the closest to the dollar for them.
Right.
I understand a lot of these are publicly traded companies, and they're just, trying to accommodate for this giant AI build out that's being, kind of pushed not only nationally but globally.
You got shareholders.
Exactly. You have a lot of shareholders, and I get it. I'm not anti-AI. Yeah. I'm pro-AI. I understand that it's a necessity that our country needs to have, and have it to our advantage, and our ability to utilize it and work alongside of it is going to separate us in the future as we grow in this.
The photos for us on Facebook, we get them all touched up by AI. If you looked at the real Eric me, ghouls, you know what we look like.
I won't hold it against you. I won't tell anyone. Once I leave here, it's only what I see online.
Fair enough. But yeah, as far as like the size of this one, and we've touched on this, like 1.6 million square foot. It's not small.
So yeah, the 1.66 million square foot was an amendment that they were trying to have pushed through. Luckily for us, our town woke up. Our township, kind of saw what was going on, and unlike a lot of townships, we acted. That proposal that you were talking about, the 1.66 million square foot, would have been the size of 29 football fields.
Wow.
For reference sake, the Link is only 1.7 million square feet. Mm-hmm. So the Link is in a spot where you have sports arenas. This would have been in East Whiteland Township.
Yeah.
Luckily, we were able to battle them in the Board of Supervisors and different council meetings and board meetings in East Whiteland, and they withdrew that amendment. However, dating back prior to our involvement in 2026, they already had an approved plan. And it wasn't small by any means, but it wasn't as large as what we were able to kind of, I guess, win in a sense.
Right.
So they're still building two buildings totaling about 500,000 square feet. And that's just above ground. So it's like when you put your home on the market, you don't put your basement as part of your square footage, right? So the biggest thing that these data centers are that they've gotten approved for is in their basements, they're using an open, not a closed loop, but an open loop water cooling system. We're in a drought. It's been on the radio. It's been in the news, local and national right now. There's just a drought. This place is going to be using about 3 million gallons of water per day. And that's coming right from our local aquifers, our local watersheds, and they're just going to be diffusing it into our watersheds. There's no closed loop system. There's no keeping that tainted, heated water internally. They're going to be using our streams and our resources to accommodate for their tenants and their shareholders, if you will. And that's what we're battling against. We were never really given advance notice on this, years back. I moved to East Whiteland in 2022. It wasn't until 2026 where I even got wind that this was being built, and it was already in progress for years. So it's just a scary situation that can happen in your backyard if you're not staying up to date on your local board of supervisor meetings.
Right, and that's very important. That's something Barry's talked about as well. So I did want to talk next here about a loophole, a grandfathering loophole. So, Tony, you live right across the street from where this is being proposed on Sweetford Road. Your community coalition's been working really hard to get a strict new protective law passed in East Whiteland, but we've also been hearing about a massive update that because of how the legal timing shook out, Green Fig is actually going to be grandfathered in to the old rules. So I have two questions for you. One, is that true? And two, what does that mean for your neighborhood and the entire county at large?
No, these are great questions. They're really important. To be honest with you, one of the things that we were able to get as a, quote, win was that our township agreed that what we had in the past for our ordinance for data centers was invalid. It wasn't up to snuff for today's growth. So they agreed to relook at our ordinance and allow some community input and involvement into curing that amendment or in that ordinance. I've actually been involved in that. I was appointed by our board of supervisors along with two other local residents to be incorporated into the making of the ordinance. We've done a really great job over the last 5 or 6 weeks incorporating a lot of the township's experts. We have sound experts, we have medical experts, attorneys, folks that are land use officials as well. However, no matter how good we do and how well we make this ordinance, which is going to be put into place in September and has right now set into a 6-month moratorium for no new data centers can be applied for in East Whiteland while we're creating this ordinance. The problem is Green Fig and this one that was already approved through a special exception was set back before this ordinance was going to be taking place and put into effect, so they don't have to abide by any of it. So they're going to go in with their open loop water system instead of a closed loop. They're going to go in with the water cooling and rather than an air chilled system, which is much more modern, much more advanced. And they're going to be going in there with a lot of those protections that we're putting in place that they don't have to abide by. So yes, it's a gut punch. We didn't get involved early enough, and our township really didn't alert us early enough, and that's going to be changing. However, we do have a diamond in the rough. His name's Andy Schneider. He's one of our neighbors, one of the local residents in Malvern Hunt. Happens to be an attorney, happens to be pretty awesome. He got involved a couple months back and has been really like our knight in shining armor, kind of presenting our cases in front of the court, which none of us really knew what to do in terms of that legal language. And he's been really great at leading that charge. And last week he was actually able to obtain an emergency session in front of the court to hear our arguments. He's presented them before to the Board of Supervisors and the Zoning Hearing Board, but this was an official court. He got to speak on behalf of our township and one of our residents, Shiva, and basically present, hey, we think the township didn't do everything they should have and that the developer didn't check every box they needed to have this plan approved. So ironically enough, the judge at first was not wanting to hear what he was saying, but after hearing what Andy said, didn't rule out that our argument was erroneous and didn't immediately go with what the developer was saying, like, hey, yeah, sure, go ahead. He wants to now hear the developer side, and that's happening today. If he doesn't like what the developer said, there's still chance that this doesn't get built. So right now it's under kind of a 50-50. We have a lot of faith in Andy and his arguments and his ability to present our case in front of the court. And right now it's the ball's in the developer's court to say, hey, this is why we think what Andy's saying is erroneous and kind of shouldn't be looked upon. But if the judge hears that and says, no, I agree with Andy, then this thing could get squashed and may have to go through a whole new application process. In that case, it would have to abide by our ordinance. So good luck today, Andy. We really hope you do well in front of the court and the judge. Yeah,
and we had Andy on the show a while back. Great guy, did a great job on it, and wishing him the best on that, Barry.
Yeah, one of the interesting things you're talking about this, it's something in the backyard. I did a monologue on my show about this. It's really we all agree it's not a good place for it. It really isn't. But the people to blame for this really are the voters, because the voters aren't watching what's going on in their township meetings. Like your neighborhood probably doesn't have anybody that attends township meetings. If they would have known it way back, they could have been ringing the alarm like Paul Revere. But everybody's too sleepy on this stuff, right? They're not vigilant, and this is what ends up happening. You're not paying attention. And then when it all of a sudden happens, like you guys didn't even know about it when it first went through. You didn't know until they went for the amended one. Everybody's like, whoa, what's going on here? The first one, but they would have been breaking ground, and everybody would have went, what the hell's going on across the street right now? And it comes down to the voters, because the voters aren't vigilant. They're not listening. They voted for these guys that if they had looked into what they stood for, they might have known and maybe not voted for them. But we're too busy voting for initials on the end of the people's, names. Are they a D or an R? And they're voting for that instead of what they actually stand for. And it becomes very frustrating, because in the end, we get what we get because we aren't doing our job. We should be protecting our own area, and we're not. And I hope to God your neighborhood, like others, continue to go to meetings afterwards. I doubt it will happen. I've been involved in politics now for over 30 years, and people go back to sleep after their issue's over, and it's very frustrating, Tony. It really is. I shake my head, and people are like, we fixed that. Well, you're not going to fix the next thing because you're not paying attention again, you knuckleheads. But what I would like to say, because we all need the data centers, we all need this stuff, but like you said, it's a lazy way out. There is a lot of open land in the center of the state. This state is by no means fully populated. You have Pittsburgh, you have Philadelphia, you have Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, Hazleton area, and you have Harrisburg. Allentown, surprisingly, is the second largest city in the state. Most people don't realize it. But moving them in towards the middle of the state where there's less population, where there could still be good roads. You can run out 80 and get out to Clearfield County and head south 6 miles. Old coal mines, things like that, they could be there. They could get their power directly from the gas. The gas companies could go in and horizontal dig. They could have their own power supply, and so they wouldn't need utility lines. I mean, everybody looks towards other utilities. They could have their own thing, which, by the way, the governor is trying to do a thing right now where it's anybody who wants to build a 25 megawatt or more power generation station for public or private use, they're trying to do it so that they can negate township ordinances or borough ordinances and say, oh no, we're going to put it right here in this community. Welcome to Loudoun County down in West Virginia. And what they've done, there's a neighborhood that's surrounded by 5 data centers, right? All there is a hum all the time in that neighborhood. So, but if they moved them out there, there's one data center. There's a friend of mine's involved in emission controls. They don't even have high-speed internet. They have their own satellite. They shoot it up to the satellite and back down to where it needs to go to be broadcast. They should be doing that. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that they could and should be doing. To get back to your earlier point, yes, staying involved is hugely of importance. Mm-hmm. My neighborhood, my community, we had 1 or 2 folks who maybe attended the Board of Supervisor meetings or zoning hearing boards here and there, but it wasn't enough to stay up to date and inform the rest of the community as to what's going on. Now that we're involved, that's our biggest call to action for everyone and anyone who can hear this, is to not just hear this and say, oh, poor Tony, poor East Whiteland, but more or less like, hey, what can I do to get involved in my local area? And it's stand up, say something, attend these meetings. Don't be quiet. Don't stop being polite. We're all too polite. We're just, kind of, get along to get by. And realistically, I think in this environment, it wasn't that our township supervisors may not have been, standing up for us, but they were ignorant. They didn't know. There was a lot of things that are technology-wise are evolving very quickly, especially with data centers. But the only way to stay knowledgeable if it's coming to your town is to be involved, be at these board meetings, stay connected with your local citizens, with your residents of your neighborhood, your neighbors in general. I think we've gotten far too away from just being friendly to our neighbors and getting involved. I didn't know any of my neighbors before this, really. I knew my next door neighbors on either left or right, but up the street, around the corner, down the block, I've gotten to know them, and I'm planning on having summer barbecues with them. And these are folks of all.
Should have happened a long time ago, my friend.
I agree.
Should have happened a long time ago.
But what the unifying message here is that we're all in this together. Whether you're an R or a D or anywhere in between, this is a community action item that you don't have to be on one side of the political spectrum or the other. We're all in this together as a local community. So get involved. Stand up.
Speaking of the community and the county, I wanted to talk a little bit about the impact, and we have time for 2 more questions. I really appreciate you coming on. So we have listeners all across Chester County, whether it's Westchester, Downingtown, Phoenixville, and beyond. It's easy for someone to see a problem affecting another neighborhood and think, that's terrible. It doesn't impact me, though. So why is this, in your opinion, an Aaron Brockovich type situation that should matter to everyone listening today, regardless of where they live?
That's a good reference. So the reason I was a little bit of an Erin Brockovich type of moment is she wasn't listened to. She wasn't, someone who was, a studied lawyer. She was just a concerned citizen like all of us have turned into, outside of Andy, who does have all of that experience. But realistically, it's just shedding light on things that were just trying to be put in the dark and not being exposed. All of us, citizens, residents alike, we have voices. We, are able to vote and have our voices heard in those types of elections. But in between that time, what we can do is just stand up. We can call our local supervisors, local board of supervisors, whatever your township elected officials are, and express your desire to know what's in the pike, what's coming, how are we protected, and get involved in creating and curing. If your township has an ordinance for data centers, get it involved. Get involved, get that beefed up. East Whiteland, we're creating one that's going to be a model. I hope that folks can utilize it. But other townships around the area, Chadds Ford included, have some good ones put in place. Get your township, get involved. Make sure that you're protected. Because it might be in, East Whiteland today where they're breaking ground or trying to break ground, but tomorrow could be yours. And just like us and my neighbors, we didn't even know until it was almost too late. So that's what I can say is get involved today. Call your supervisors.
Well, that actually leads me to my final question I had. So for anyone listening right now who wants to stand with your coalition and protect their own neighborhood before the developers show up, what's the plan and what do you need them to do now?
Sure. I think I referenced this earlier. We know a lot of us are just brought up to be polite, just kind of go along with things and say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. But we need to stop being polite. We need to stop being passive, and we need to get loud, like right now. This AI development and build out is happening across the country at rapid speeds. We see it in the news every day. Loudoun County, Virginia, I think they have 6 or 7 of the largest data centers in the whole country, just going up in a township.
They're exploiting Lucerne County right now because it's good road. It's 80 and 81 up there, so it's good roads for access for the trucks and all that type of thing. They're laying waste to Lucerne County with everything they're doing up there. Plus, they have the Berwick nuclear plant.
And it's just a lazy corporate development structure. They see, power lines, they see power stations, substations, utility lines
and
that they
put
can
a thumbtack right there,
right away. And a lot of these land developers are buying up swaths of land in townships that may not have a group of concerned citizens like ours,
or they don't have the money to fight it. You get up into
Bingo.
Hobby Township up near Berwick. I know somebody who's up there that's doing a fight, and they don't have the money. All the lawsuit that goes on. You think Toll Brothers is a big lawsuit? Pfft, you ain't seen nothing.
And that's
yet.
why we got so lucky to have Andy in our neighborhood. He's not getting, he might after this, but he's not getting paid by any of us to do all the work that he is, the hours and hours of legwork that he's put in. That could be costly for neighborhoods. And to be honest with you, a lot of folks are 9 to 5. They're working. They don't have time to focus on what's going on, in that lot across the street. Like, oh yeah, I drive by it every day, but I don't really know. I don't have time to focus on that because I've got to put food on my table. And things are crazy, but all I can say is don't let the problem get out of hand. Focus on what you can, and that's in your lolocal community. Get involved.
Yeah, I think that's well said. A great way to end it. So, Tony, really appreciate you coming on this morning, and make sure to keep us posted.
Hey, I really appreciate you guys having us.